I am so glad you convinced me that the family car should be the Defender 110. It is so beautiful inside. It's so comfortable, and it just feels indestructible.
Yes, it really is. I've been waiting a long time for the new model to come out. The Defender 110, I'm telling you, it's my favorite car of all times. It's my third one. You know, I have stories of going off-road. The guy managed the group. He was like, what are you doing in this beautiful car? I'm like, I'm going off-road. He's like, are you sure? Because you can use one of ours. And then they look like Mad Max cars. I'm like, no, we're going to do this. And he was shocked.
Wow. Well, it's great because the Defender has been reimagined for 21st century adventure, and its unparalleled off-road ability, as well as its robust interior, are invaluable whether you're headed towards uncharted territory or just a weekend of exploration. The Defender 110 tackles challenging surroundings with absolute confidence. The SUV conveys strength outside and in, featuring peerless technology like an intuitive driver display and an award-winning infotainment system. That's my favorite part, to keep you connected no matter where the journey takes you. Adventure is unique to everyone, and so is the Defender. Choose from the two-door Defender 90, the four-door Defender 110, or the larger Defender 130 with the ability to seat up to 8 passengers. You'll find uncompromising performance in all three. So pack up and go even further with the Defender 110. Learn more at LandRoverUSA.com/Defender.
Capella University is rethinking higher education. With its game-changing FlexPath learning format, you can earn your degree on your schedule and fit your education seamlessly into your life. Imagine your future differently at capella.edu.
This isn't your average business podcast, and he's not your average host. This is the James Altucher Show on the Choose Yourself Network. Today on the James Altucher Show.
What happened in those first years? What gave you confidence to continue before you were really making a living at it?
You just know in your gut that this is what you're going to do. Like, I wanted to do it since I was a child, and then you get laughs, and that's it. You have no idea what awaits you. You don't know that you're going to be doing hell gigs. You don't know that you're not going to be having any success for a long time. You have no idea, but you're so overjoyed with doing stand-up. You're so happy that you're in New York City, going to clubs, getting on stage, making people laugh, working on yourself, learning it, doing it, just going. It's just pure bliss. There's a lot of hardship. You know, you're making $5 a night, and that's all the money you have. And there's a lot of things that you would perceive as negatives, but you really don't think about that. I didn't.
You'll appreciate this. I was talking to Paul Reiser, who, of course, was in Red Oaks along with you.
Yeah.
And he says when you're starting out, there's almost like this womb around you to protect you from the fact that you might suck those first few years, but you don't quite realize it until you're good.
Yeah.
So you okay for me to start?
Go for it.
So excited to have stand-up comedian, radio host, book author, TV. I don't want to say you're a TV star, but you've been a TV host and you've been on TV a billion times.
Yeah.
You've been in movies. There's
True.
nothing you haven't done. Tom Papa, author of the book that came out right now, Your Dad Stole My Rake and Other Family Dilemmas.
Bravo. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on. You know, I read the book. It's so funny. You know what it reminds me of? And I know Jerry Seinfeld's been a huge influence on your career, and we'll talk about that a little bit. But it really reminds me in style of sign language. Were you thinking that when you wrote the book?
No, I never read sign language, actually.
You kidding?
No.
Well, sign language is basically, you know, each chapter sort of reminds you of something. It's all very smart observations about life.
Right.
But it reminds you, he could maybe use some of these observations in his act.
Right.
And I sort of feel like you're much more concise. You basically take the horror that is life and boil it down to its daily necessities, and then you're like an X-ray machine looking at the truth of every aspect of life. Parenting, you know, children, dating, being a husband, being a wife.
Yeah, I tried to break it all down by each person that you have in your family.
Yeah, and then also each kind of activity you do. So like romance.
Right.
And so I'm just so there's two directions we go. Just talk more about the book or talk about your career. Let's start off with the career, and then I'd love to
Sure.
get into the book.
Okay.
But you started doing stand-up in 1993,
Yes.
25 years ago.
June 12th, 1993.
Yeah, and I on Mark Maron's podcast, you mentioned also June 12th. It's like it stands in your mind.
Oh, yeah.
Like, why does it stand in your mind so much?
It's, why would your wedding anniversary stand in your mind?
It doesn't.
Or Right. That one's actually a little fuzzy. I have to take a beat and think about that one. But I know June 12th, 1993.
Like, what happened? Were you like terrified? What was going on? And I tell you and I, by the way, we're the exact same age.
Oh, yeah?
We grew up in New Jersey.
Oh, nice. Where were you?
North Brunswick, New Jersey.
Oh, yeah.
You're like northern New Jersey somewhere.
Yeah, Bergen County.
Yeah. And so June 12th, 1993, you must have finished college a few years earlier.
Exactly. And I had acted in college, but I always wanted to be a comedian when I was a kid. And when I got out of school, I was auditioning. I went on a couple auditions and stuff. And I was like, this is hard. Like, people have to hire me to do this thing. And I was looking at the Village Voice, and they had an ad in the Voice for the New York Comedy Club. And it said, like amateur night kind of thing. And, if you bring a couple friends to sit in the audience, we'll put you on stage. And I remember so clearly, like I went to my room, had the phone, called them, like was all nervous. Just to make the phone call was nerve-wracking. Like, okay, hey, how are you? And they said, okay, we got a date in June 12th. Come on in, bring your 3 friends, and show starts at whatever time. And that was it. I mean, it's almost like I remember the date from making the phone call even more than like when I went in. You know what I mean?
Why
Like,
do you
it
think
just
it's so
seared in.
nerve-wracking, like that first time up and all the activity around it? Like
Yeah.
there are other things in life that should be much more nerve-wracking but aren't.
Yeah.
And yet people are terrified that moment before they go on stage.
Well, it's also there's a lot of things at play. It's not only is it standing up in front of a crowd of people with your jokes without a role, just you exposed as just you, and they're going to reject you or accept you. You've never done it before. I'd never been in a comedy club before.
but you had been funny before.
I'd been funny. I'd watched on television. I watched everything that I could possibly find, but I had never physically walked into a comedy club before. So that's all nerve-wracking. But then also, with a perspective now that I didn't have then, was you're also stepping up and saying, all right, I'm going to put my dream to the test. Like, if you grow up your whole life thinking I'm going to do this, and then you show up and you have no aptitude for it, and it goes horribly wrong, you're killing your dream. Like, it really is a moment of truth right there. So you could see why it's so definitive. And I went up, and luckily it went well enough that the dream was confirmed, and then I just kept going.
Because there was 7 people in the audience, 5 of whom were your friends.
Yes, they were all my people, and like 2 other stragglers. And it was my friend Gary was up on stage hosting, and Greg Giraldo was waiting in the wings. We were the only people. We were the only ones on the show.
And is Gary like a stand-up now?
Yeah, Gary. I'm spacing on his last name. He's a writer at Kimmel. Gary, not Newman. Gary Gold something. He's very funny. He's bald, Jewish. He has a big nose that he had these cards, and they had pictures, and with a hole for his nose, and he would put his nose through the poster board. So there was like a picture of a baby with a little, and then
funny.
he'd stick his nose through, and then there was like a rocket ship, and then he'd put his nose through.
Did you write jokes for that first appearance, or did you just like say funny stuff?
No, I wrote jokes. And it was really a confirmation, because the first joke that I really wrote that I believed in worked. And then
What was that joke?
that joke was at the time it was it's in schools now. They're handing out condoms. They're handing out condoms for free to school children. When I was in 3rd grade, I needed 3 notes and a blood test just to get on the bookmobile. But it's a joke,
Funny.
It's not killer, but it's got structure. There's it's a real joke, and they laughed. They laughed in the right place, and but then I ran out of jokes, and then just kind of faked it for the last couple of minutes. They gave you probably 5 minutes, and I was out within 2.
and after that first stand-up appearance, you must have I mean, we'll skip around a little bit, but I
Sure.
want to hear what happened in the years right after. But you went on to host on TV The Marriage Ref, which was the show created by Jerry Seinfeld. You toured with Jerry Seinfeld. Your first comedy special came out in 2005, and you've done several since then. You've been on movies like The Informant. You've been on a whole bunch of movies and TV shows. But after that first stand-up experience, and then the 12 years after, you were again touring and performing a lot. But it was 12 years before your first special came out. What happened in those first years? What gave you confidence to continue before you were really making a living at it?
It was just, you just know in your gut that this is what you're going to do. Like, I wanted to do it since I was a child, and then you get laughs. And there's another comedian, Greg Giraldo, who I just met, and he's telling me I'm funny and he's funny and we can do this together. And oh my God, we're doing it. Let's go. And that's it. It really is just purely, you have no idea what waits for you, what awaits you. You don't know that you're going to be doing hell gigs. You don't know that you're not going to be having any success for a long time. You have no idea, but you're so overjoyed with doing stand-up. You're so happy that you're in New York City, going to clubs, getting on stage, making people laugh, working on yourself, learning it, doing it, just going. It's just pure bliss. There's a lot of hardship, and you're making $5 a night, and that's all the money you have. And there's a lot of things that you would perceive as negatives, but you really don't think about that. I didn't. I just was so happy to be doing it that I say it's like jumping into like a raging river. I jumped in the river, and there's no getting out of it. This is what we wanted our whole life. We're headed to the sea. Let's go.
You'll appreciate this. I was talking to Paul Reiser, who of course was in Red Oaks along with you.
Yeah.
And he says, like, when you're starting out, there's almost like this womb around you to protect you from the fact that you might suck those first few years, but you don't quite realize it until you're good.
Yeah, maybe. It's I knew I could do it. Like, I knew I was funny. I was totally different. I was totally frightened. I used to lunge like off to the side. I would go super fast. I had long hair, and I would go really fast and wouldn't even stop to hear the audience laugh or not. Which, it was just fear.
So that you would, it's what's called, you would step on their laughs. Like you
I was just
give them
going.
time to laugh.
They got me 10 minutes, and I'm just going to use every 10 minutes and just go. And I thought it was just like about an energy thing, just to get it as big as I possibly could and then get off the stage. But, looking back, it's like, no, I wasn't confident enough to stand there, give a joke, and let it rest.
Yeah.
And see the judgment. So I was just going super fast. I remember Giraldo telling me, you've got one night I was at Stand Up New York and did a show, and I froze in the middle of it. It's probably like a year or two in, and just froze, like couldn't remember where I was going, couldn't remember what I was doing. It was uncomfortable, and got off the stage. It was like a horrible, and I'm outside just like, what was that? Like, what the hell happened? And I remember Giraldo coming up and saying, you've got really good jokes. You don't have to do the whole like running around the stage, lunging, screaming thing. Like, you're good enough. Like, let the jokes be. And then I slowly brought it back, and I realized like I froze because I was so manic and like I wasn't relaxed enough. But I mean, that's the whole.
So you weren't
It's
like
8 years of trying to become comfortable enough where I'm talking up there the way I'm talking to you now. It takes that long. Like, now I'm more natural there than I am right now. But in the beginning, it's a freaky situation. And there's no shortcuts. There's no way around it. You have to go up and do it over and over and over and over again, to the point where you are so confident that you can really, truly be yourself.
Well, like, how many times, like in those first few years, how many times a week were you going up on stage?
Not a lot. I remember wishing, I remember saying, I wish I had an agent to book my open mics, because you'd work so hard. Just your whole day was spent trying to find a gig and trying to find something. And I was living in New Jersey, so I wasn't, just walking down the street to go to a club. Like, I had to get a date and then come in. And, it's funny. Like you say, you started in 93. It's 25 years of doing it. The first 4 years, you're not up on stage very much. I remember like anytime a friend would visit and come into the city, I would I'd feel bad if I didn't have a show because I was like, I'm a comedian now. I'm a comedian, and then they come in and like it's a Friday night and you don't have a show.
What were you doing for your full-time job?
I was working. My mother had an advertising agency in New Jersey, in northern New Jersey. So I was working there, and I just worked there until I got enough money off gigs where it was equal, and then I jumped, and then moved into the city.
And so I sort of feel like now, and just, judging from both your specials that I've seen and reading your book, correct me if I'm wrong, it seems like part of your process is, okay, let's put a very common, relatable topic up at the top of the page, like romance or parenting or children, and then find as many truthful or things about it that people might not expect. For instance, like, you mentioned at one point in your book, women are always looking for a great guy to date, and you point out probably correctly there are no great guys. Like, I have 2 daughters. I tell them, better for you to be lesbians. Like, all guys are crap.
Yeah.
And so this is a truth that most people don't really admit. And it seems like your book is like an X-ray machine on truth after truth after truth. So I'm just wondering if that's close to your process, or how does your brain work when you're coming up with these ideas?
Yeah, I just I talk a lot about family. It's kind of where I live. And in my act, I'll venture further from just my family. I'll go to the family of my community, or the family of the culture, or the family of the country, and what it is to be human. But at its heart, and this book is entirely, is my family and your family. I've been watching your family. I've been watching my family. I
was wondering what that video camera was in my apartment.
Yeah, that's that little blue light beeping. That was me. And so I'm talking about a subject that a lot of people have spoken about, written about in so many different ways. So I really see it, but I love it, and I love all the intricacies of it, and I love all of the different ins and outs, and it's where I live, and it's where I feel comfortable, it's where I find my joy, that's what I like. So it's my job then, as a writer and a comedian, to not be a hack about it, to not do the things that I've seen 1,000 times before.
So, like, let's take as an example, like, being a husband. What would be a hack observation as opposed to, a more in-depth, layered observation?
Like, it would be a little hacky. And by hacky, I mean it's just been retread. Like, people have all done it before. It'll still get a chuckle. It will still work. But you're not the first one to come up with that thought. That's not a new thought, right? Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it's a little tricky coming off the top of my head. But a husband thing, you've heard a million times. In the mall, the husband's the guy standing there with the wife's handbag and just sitting on the bench while his wife shops. We've seen that scenario 1,000 times, and people have made little jokes about all of that. My thing about being in the mall as a father and a husband that I write about in the book is I shouldn't be shopping with my 13-year-old daughter for clothes. I shouldn't be standing in Forever 21 waiting for my daughter to come out of the dressing room. No one there knows I have a daughter in the dressing room. They just see a sweaty, uncomfortable man breathing heavy by himself next to the bras and panties. Right? So that, I haven't heard that angle before. I feel like I kind of was able to take something that I did a little more worked a little harder than just stopped at the first idea.
Right. And so and it's relatable because
it's relatable. It's true.
Yeah.
It's something we all deal with. You as a father.
Yeah.
I don't know how old they are, but you're
19 and 16 daughters.
Yeah. So you've been there. You walk into a clothing store with your daughter in the mall, and immediately you shouldn't be there. So it's relatable. It's true, but it's something that we haven't dealt with before. And I think that's the job. I think you have to just. I think that's the job of all of this, of any writing or creation of stuff. It's like we've all been there before. Everybody's been talking about everything. Just work a little harder and make it as personal as you possibly can. Because there hasn't been a you before. There have been hosts. There have been comedians, a million of them. But you are new. You are brand new. This is the first time anyone gets to see you. So that's your job then, to convey whatever you have, because that's what's going to make you special.
Well, what if, like, again, it seems like that going that extra layer, though. Like, okay, everybody thinks, oh, the guy in the mall holding the handbag. What's going on in your head when you say, well, what's the very next layer of that? What's the next level of that? And I know this is tricky, maybe trying to break apart your
well,
process.
it's not really like, let me start with a lame premise and go deeper. It's, let me tell you about what I deal with. I go shopping with my daughter. Every guy goes shopping with his daughter. Every guy goes shopping with his wife. What am I feeling? Why am I uncomfortable? Why does this feel weird? Why do I not want to do this? What is happening inside me? And you're constantly picking it apart. You're like, is it being with my kid and we don't know what to talk about? Does she not want to be with me? Do I not want to be with her? Is it just being around all this capitalism and all this stuff lying to us? Is it that I'm spending money I shouldn't be spending? What is it? What is bothering me about being in this thing, in this place with my daughter, who I love, but now we're in a new situation and I don't like it. And then I find myself standing there in pink with a wall full of panties. All right, well, this is pretty clear what's making me uncomfortable right here. And then, it just something triggers and then you turn it into something in your act.
And it seems like, some comedians look at what makes them angry and they transform that into humor. Some comedians look at, like, let's say Seinfeld looks at what's weird in a situation and they turn that into humor. It feels like you're taking personal situations and what makes you feel either annoyed or uncomfortable and you turn that into humor.
Yeah, I've heard Jerry actually say that, like, all comedy comes from hostility. Like, that there is, and it's accurate. Like, if something really gets you, and there's degrees of that. There's pure rage and there's minor annoyance, But I think that there is some key to that. There is some key to, you don't see a lot of acts that are enjoyable. I don't even know if they exist, where someone's just talking about how great everything is. You know what I mean?
I think it was Carrie Fisher who wrote, "No one wants to read about beautiful blonde people in like a novel or a movie." So
right, exactly. Unless something happens to them.
Right. It has to be some suffering or ugliness or pain or whatever.
Yeah. It's just, it's just being truthful. I think that's the essence of it.
So like after 4 years, you're going up, you want to be a comedian, but you're still going through the open mic phase. Was there ever a point where you're like, it's so disappointing to bomb, on those occasions when you're going to bomb?
Yeah.
It's so disappointing. Did you ever feel like quitting? Like, what was a low point?
I'm sorry. I never felt like quitting because I was bombing. Like, I never felt like I always felt like I was growing. I always felt like I was able to get better at it. The thing that gets challenging is when all of a sudden people that are who you started with, or people that are around you or started just behind you, start getting on late night shows or start getting success in some form, and you're lagging behind. And it's that career frustration is the thing you really have to wrestle with. It's like, why are they getting it and am I not getting it? And
so, like, what specifically was happening?
About it.
Like, who was getting it?
I don't know. Like, I remember there was a Comedy Central had a special called Comedians in Bryant Park, which is a horrible idea. It's a horrible show. Doing comedy outside was a horrible endeavor for everyone involved. But it was a TV show, and a couple of my friends got on it. I don't remember which ones. I remember Kevin Brennan was on it. He'd started before me, but still, there were enough people that got it, and I didn't get it. And I was like, what do you mean I didn't get it? I'm the funniest one, right? And then you have to start dealing with, well, maybe I'm not, and maybe why don't they see it? And what's all of that stuff? That's a thing you have to wrestle and contend with to keep going.
And I feel like that could happen in every industry. Like,
sure.
Let's say you're a sales guy for a company and other sales guys are getting the big deals, and you feel like, I'm just as good a salesman. Like, how do you wrestle with that? Because obviously if you keep on improving and your peer group is also improving, eventually you'll ride one way or the other with your peer group.
Yeah, maybe. Some people never get it. Some people just fall off. They get a couple little shots and nothing really goes. You know, I said, I remember Nick DiPaolo was complaining about something like that, about somebody getting something, a TV show or something. We're at the Comedy Cellar. And I said, Nick, you know, I was trying to be the optimist. And I was like, Nick, you know, that happens in every business. Someone who doesn't deserve it gets, you know, promoted to a higher position. It just happens all the time. And he said, yeah, but in those professions, you don't have to see that guy's face on the side of a bus. And
funny.
he had a point. Our successes and failures are very public. And everyone else's, your peers' successes are in your face. They're in your comedy. They're in your movies. They're on the side of buses. They're on billboards in Times Square. So you have to deal with it. You have to find a way that it's not going to eat you up. And there's some people that are too sensitive and can't take that, and it will end up, you know, stopping them.
So there's two things. One is, how do you kind of buffer yourself against that sensitivity, and the other is, how do you keep going? How do you keep improving? Like, what do you think at that critical point? Like, what do you think happened to you then?
You have to keep working. You have to keep doing the work. You're never as good as you can be. So you have to realize that that's what really at its essence is the only thing that you can control is your writing and performing and how good you can get. That's it. That's really the only thing. You can maybe get a cool shirt, change your haircut, but you really at its heart, that's the one thing that you can control. So I got to a point where it was, I have to, I learned that and was doing that, and also put blinders on that I wasn't going to, it's kind of like when you can't look at Twitter anymore. Like, you have to just stop caring about everybody else. They don't care about you and what you just have to, this is your journey, this is your thing, do the work, put blinders on, and don't care about what other people are doing. And you have to really not care, truly. And sometimes you can get to that place by not paying attention. Sometimes it's just isolating. Sometimes it's just doing your set and going back home and not hanging out. Whatever it is, whatever you have to do at that moment, depending on how low your self-esteem is or strong it is, you have to really completely realize that nobody else is here. And then you need confirmation. You need some crumb. You need something to keep you going at every stage. You need the club owner to say, hey, I'm putting you on the regular show. You need another comic to say, hey, I'm bringing you on the road with me. Hey, you know, you need those things. You need people to bring you up. And the biggest one for me was when I met Seinfeld, for sure. When I met him and he said I was funny and he was hanging out with me, and then eventually he said, come and open for me. It was just relief that, okay, at this time when I've had very little success, I know I'm good, but I haven't really, it's not panning out yet. This guy, this huge guy, this student of all things comedy, says, no, you're good. You're good. Keep going. You're good.
So at that point,
that's huge.
You had passed at the Comedy Cellar. You were performing at the Comedy Cellar. He must have seen you there, I guess.
Stand Up New York.
At Stand Up New York? You're kidding. You know, he was just there last week performing.
Yeah, he told me.
So
he told me he went in, there was no crowd. He went to get a coffee with George Wallace.
Yeah.
Tweeted, I'm going to be there. And then it filled up and he had an audience.
I can't believe it, because I got the call, Seinfeld's going to be here in 30 minutes, and I was out of town. And I just it was that night, it was Seinfeld, Judah Friedlander, Godfrey, and a couple others, and I just missed a great night.
Yeah.
But
and there was no crowd there, so he just tweeted and then you had a crowd.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He filled it up.
Yep. It's crazy.
So right before I could see why he would go for you, because not that you have exactly the same style. Like I said, I think he looks at many aspects of life and finds the weird in them, whereas I think you stick to the more personal and find the weird or the annoying or the uncomfortable in them. But it's kind of side by side. You go along with his style. It's clean.
Yeah.
It's very audience friendly, regardless of the audience. You're not tearing apart the audience in any way.
Yeah.
But right before then, do you feel like you had made some leap, like your voice and your performance ability had kind of made this leap, or what do you think
you start
happened?
to figure out, like I said about how there's no shortcut and you have to just keep doing it until you're so confident that you're yourself. For me, that was about 8 years in.
8 years in.
Yeah, and I remember
8 years is a long time.
I remember, and it might have been in my head that Attell had told me that David Attell had told me that about 8 years is what he noticed for himself and for others. That's about when you start to be solid. You have enough confidence that your voice is clear, and you know how to write for you, and all those things start to mesh at 8 years. And that was about right. That was pretty accurate.
You know what I love about fantasy sports is that even though I'm not going to be a great basketball player or a baseball player or a football player or whatever, I feel like I get to participate and make decisions and use my knowledge of these different leagues or these different sports to compete. So it's like I can pick my team or I can pick my favorite players and I could use my knowledge to make predictions and maybe even make money. So with the basketball season here, you can now pick combo projections across football and basketball from the Specials League on Prize Picks. This is a league created specifically for combo projections that include two or more players from different sports or leagues. Want to play alongside some of Prize Picks' favorite players like rapper Meek Mill and comedian Andrew Schultz, who's also been a guest on this podcast, and I've been a guest on his? You can now find community plays under the promos tab of the app to view entries for some of the biggest names in the Prize Picks community each week. Look, Prize Picks even offers a reboot policy so that your entries stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. For football and basketball games, if you have a player who exits the game in the first half and does not return in the second, that player is rebooted. Prize Picks is the only daily fantasy sports platform with an injury insurance policy. What? So, I love playing it. I love anywhere where I can use analytical ability with my interests to demonstrate some skill and maybe make some money. And I like the game-like aspect. I do wish they had chess as a category on prizepicks.com, but I'll settle for what they've got. Maybe I should make my own fantasy chess league. But in any case, I love Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/James. Use code James for a first deposit match up to $100. That's the easiest $100 you're ever going to make. So that's prizepicks.com/James and use code James. Daily fantasy sports made easy. The future of learning is definitely online. Like, it's such BS that you have to spend $200,000 or take $200,000 in loans and go to some fancy school when it's useless. It doesn't guarantee you a job. Most employers, including me, do not care about degrees or grades or anything like that. We want to care that you love what you're doing, that you know what you're doing, in some cases that you have experience or that you're willing to learn. But people in general love learning and are curious. Like, the key to success is curiosity. And I think masterclass.com is the perfect model for online learning. I'm really happy they're sponsoring this episode. If you're going to give a gift, give the gift of learning. Masterclass makes a meaningful gift this season for you and anyone on your list, because both of you can learn from the best to become your best, from leadership to effective communication to cooking. Let me tell you some of the classes I've taken. I've taken comedy from Steve Martin. I mean, can you believe I can take a class from Steve Martin on comedy, or Judd Apatow, my favorite comedy director? I could take an actual class from him on writing. Wolfgang Puck on cooking. Dan Brown on writing, or Judy Bloom, who's been on this podcast, on writing. By the way, Wolfgang Puck also has been on this podcast. It's such a pleasure. I try to take classes all the time from masterclass.com. And whether you're watching Masterclass on TV or listening in audio mode in the app or on their site, the quality speaks for itself. It's like these Masterclass instructors are your own personal mentors that are going to help you reach the next level. How much would it cost to take one-on-one classes on comedy from Steve Martin or on chess from Gary Kasparov? You just wouldn't be able to do it. But it would cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. With a Masterclass annual membership, it's $10 a month. Memberships start at $120 a year for unlimited access to one-on-one classes with all 180 plus Masterclass instructors. So it's not just $120 for one instructor. You get all 180 plus Masterclass instructors. boost your confidence, and find practical takeaways you can apply to your life and at work. And if you own a business or are a team leader, use Masterclass to empower and create future-ready employees and leaders. That's the real education in today's world. So this holiday season, you can give one annual membership and get one free at masterclass.com/JAS. JAS, of course, stands for the James Altucher Show. So right now you can get 2 memberships for the price of one at masterclass.com/JAS. Masterclass.com/JAS. Offer terms apply.
AI might be the most important new computer technology ever. It's storming every industry and literally billions of dollars are being invested. So buckle up. The problem is that AI needs a lot of speed and processing power, so how do you compete without costs spiraling out of control? It's time to upgrade to the next generation of the cloud, Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, or OCI. OCI is a single platform for your infrastructure, database, application development, and AI needs. OCI has 4 to 8 times the bandwidth of other clouds, offers one consistent price instead of variable regional pricing, and of course, nobody does data better than Oracle. So now you can train your AI models at twice the speed and less than half the cost of other clouds. If you want to do more and spend less, like Uber, 8x8, and Databricks Mosaic, take a free test drive of OCI at oracle.com/advance. That's oracle.com/advance. oracle.com/advance.
I see your specials, and the first thing that comes across is you're very likable on stage. So you go out on the stage, you have a little bit of a smile. The audience is very happy to see you. I think it was on your last special. You said something like, "Oh, you guys look like you've lost 10 pounds." And it was just this funny way of just opening up to an audience that already is, predetermined to like you because they bought tickets to your show.
Right.
And right from there, you're able to, you establish likability and you start telling your jokes. And it just felt very comfortable, like you're having a conversation with your friends.
Right.
When you were starting out, it probably wasn't like that.
There's probably hints of it, because that is my personality, I guess. But yeah, I know when I go up there, like I think the audience knows that I'm in control. Back then, it was who knows who's in control.
What does that mean, in control?
Well, when I walk up on stage, like you can watch a new comic go on, who gets up there and is like, you can tell they're a little shaky. They're looking for approval. I don't need their approval. So I'm in control. I know what I'm here to do. I know I'm going to make you laugh. I know pretty much how this is going to go. And it may be, slightly better on some nights and slightly less, but I pretty much know how it's going to go because I'm in control of the situation. I'm going to dictate how this happens.
And again, I think that's something that's applicable to almost every industry, this notion of being in control of the situation and having the confidence to sort of control the environment around you. What do you think? What do you think is that subtle difference that suddenly before you were not in control and then suddenly now you're in control? And I know that's a hazy question. But
no, it's not a hazy question, but it's also not just a flip. It's not just and then today you didn't have it yesterday, and it's slowly building up time all that time on stage, knowing what's going on, having successes. Having done TV, having that gone well, all of a sudden, you're turning into a different person. You're turning into a different performer. You've had confirmation. Your jokes are working. You're strong on the shows. It evolves. It just slowly starts to happen.
And so let's say you go on a stage where nobody knows you in advance, and let's say their inclination, they don't like your first joke for some reason. So you feel like that tension from the audience that something's a little bit off.
Yep.
And again, this is applicable to many situations in life. What would be your go-to technique or thought to say, okay, I need to kind of rein this in and bring it back on my side?
Yeah, that's a hard question because it really depends on the moment. Because sometimes you'll go slower. Sometimes you'll take a pause. Sometimes you go a little faster. Sometimes you just go to the next joke. Sometimes you'll talk to someone in the front row. All of a sudden, he's talking to us. Like, He broke that wall, and now we're all alert. Sometimes take the mic out and start moving around. Sometimes don't move it at all. Just look at him. Comment on the first joke. Comment that you're aware, as they're aware, that didn't work. Who knows? You got to kind of be yourself and feel the energy of the room. Who is this crowd? Are they really hot and just missed it? Is it really hot temperature-wise in here, and they're sitting there like dish rags, and it's going to be a lot of work to get them going? It's difficult, but you've been in that situation so many times that you have enough tricks in your bag that you can try a bunch of things.
Right. You've probably also seen other comics in that situation many times. So you have not only your own experience, but seeing live other your friends go through that experience as well and how they deal with it.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny because like even to this day, I did 4 sets at the Cellar on Saturday or Friday, and 3 were great and 1 was lame.
Tell me about that one. Because here you have been doing it 25 years and you're telling me, oh yeah, I had a lame set.
Yeah, it was lame.
Saturday.
It was lame on Saturday. The first 3 were great. I had so much fun, and it was a blast, and it was just awesome. And that last one, I hadn't done 4 sets in a single night in a while, so maybe I was tired. I'd done some filming during the day, so I definitely was a little tired. But I don't have a real answer for you why it didn't go well, but it was work. That's the difference. I'll get through it. The audience thinks that was a good set, but I know that it's work. And what's so much fun and funny when you're on stage or when your friend is on stage, you know what's going on. Like, they know I'm working. Like, because all of a sudden I just closed with 20 minutes before. And in the other show, I just hit it and it didn't go anywhere and I can't get off. And now I'm going on to the next one. Like, it just becomes work.
Do you feel fear at that moment?
Not fear. It's just like, oh, come on. This is my last set. Just go with it. Then you start seeing your friends and you, in those situations, paraphrase a joke. You ever have that? Where you're not saying it word for word like you normally do. You start like kind of talking around it because you're thinking the whole time. As the joke's coming out of your mouth, you're like, what is it? Is it hot in here? Where are these people from? What's that guy? Or did they just drop the checks? What's happening? You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot going on. And you can't really pin down exactly why it was lame, but the energy was just lame.
And is it possible you resort? Did you leave? So Seinfeld has said, whenever it's not working, just fall back on your material, and eventually it'll work out. And I think that works if you're doing like an hour, because you have time to win back the audience.
Yeah.
But like when you were doing these 4 sets at the Comedy Cellar, I imagine those are like 15-minute sets.
Yeah.
So you don't have enough time really to win back the audience.
You do. I think you do. I think in 15 minutes you do. I think I never heard him say that, but I do that. Like, your material is the thing. It's like, I could comment on what's wrong with you guys. Is it me? You could express the things that you're secretly thinking in your head, or you can just stick to the jokes and see if that'll pull them out. If you have material and it's proven material, it's the greatest weapon you have. It's all you have, really. So might as well just stick to it and use it. And you can turn them, a set on Colbert is 5 minutes. So you're talking about 3 Colberts. Like, that's enough time.
Yeah, I'm always intrigued by that too. Like, so Colbert, Conan, all these shows. So you've been on, you were on Jay Leno 13 times. I don't know how many times you've been on Conan and Colbert and all these other late night shows, but a billion times basically. Mm-hmm. And you're doing 5 minutes, and you have 5 minutes to just kill it and do your best material. Yeah. Then at the clubs, you have to expand it out 3 times as large, 15 minutes. And then in your specials, you're doing it for an hour.
Yeah.
And what's the different? This is kind of getting into the weeds of comedy, but what's the differences? Because you have to build much more rapport with the audience for an hour.
I think the difference is that you're boiling it down. It's at its purest form in 5 minutes. You've really taken all of the fat out, and you've got maybe 14 jokes that you're going to go through in that time. And then when you're doing 15 at Stand Up New York, that same set will have other jokes and other tags within it. So it's getting a little fatter. You're having stuff that didn't make it to Colbert because they're funny, but they weren't all as crystal clear as those other things. Like I always say that comedy is like poetry, in that you're having the most impact with the fewest amount of words. That's what poetry is to me. Like you boiled it all the way down, and in one line you can say so much. And I think comedy at its best is that. And when you're going and you have to do a tight set, 5-minute set, that's when you're putting that on display. And then a 15-minute set, say, is a short story, and an hour-long set is a novel, right? Like you can say the same thing that you're saying in that novel in this concise time. That's what doing Colbert is. And you're doing your special, you're taking the power of that Colbert thing, and you have more breadth. You're able to, say more, take your time, do different things, but you're dealing with the same form, but different alcohol levels.
So after 8 years or whenever it was, you meet Seinfeld, or he'd been watching you all along, and it's almost like he comes down and blesses you from up high and says, "Tour with me," and then your whole career changes, or it must have felt like that.
Yeah, because once it was the biggest part was learning from him, being friends with him, learning how to carry yourself as a comedian, as a person in this business. That you don't have to be drinking and smoking and doing all this stuff. You can just be a normal person and do your work. And I learned all of that, like how to be a person, a human being in this industry, how to be a good comic. I absorbed from him.
Like what do you mean? Like what did you absorb?
The work ethic more than anything. The work ethic. You see when you're starting out, you see certain people who just write on stage, or some people have never written their thing down. And I always liked to write. I always wrote. And there's not a lot of people that were doing it that way. So then to have him be a proven performer who actually worked the way I wanted to work, that was confirmation that I was doing the right thing.
How did you know he was doing that? Would he?
Oh, we talk about it. All he talks about is comedy. Just he loves talking about it, and is always interested in how other people are doing it. What are you doing, and how do you do it?
And so what did he say to you? No, you're doing it. I think you're doing it wrong.
No. He's a guy, Seinfeld. He just came off the biggest show in the world, and he's a giant comedian that I've watched since I was a child. And he doesn't have to say much. He just has to be, and you just are taking his example, and you take from everybody. You learn any lesson you can learn from anybody. How this person performs, how Chappelle does something, or how Eddie Izzard did something, or all these different things. But to have someone so close that I'm sitting across the table with, having conversations night after night, be Jerry, you're a fool to not try and learn as much as possible.
Like, what are some of the key things that you learned? So there's the writing.
You know what else? A big thing is, he really gives you pride in being a comedian. He really believes that it is the best profession in show business, that it is so rewarding, that you're so lucky to be able to do it, that you get to write and produce and perform all by yourself without any other people. You're not acting. You're not taking other people's words. You're not sitting in a trailer. He gives you such pride in what it is to be a comedian. I say it's like going to the comedy chiropractor. You sit down with him, you can feel a little funky about, what's happening with my act or my job or whatever. And then you sit with him and you just talk about it, and you're like, oh, it's just good to be a comic. He just kind of corrects your head.
Yeah, because to some extent, I sort of feel like being a comedian is like a modern day philosopher, because, if somebody wants to just laugh, there's plenty of videos, there's millions of videos on YouTube of like cats doing stupid things that make people laugh.
Yeah.
So this is a dumb question, but what's the difference between stand-up comedy and cat videos on YouTube? You could laugh at both, but stand-up comedy, there's something somehow more meaningful.
Yeah. Well, you're dealing with language. You're dealing with language. You're dealing with insight. You're dealing with it's a relationship. We're having this conversation now, and if you can weave things in that we both agree on, it has more depth to it. No cat can do that.
So far.
Yeah, it's probably coming.
Yeah, cats with chips. So you tour with Seinfeld, And then the next thing is he's planning the show, The Marriage Ref. He asks you to host that.
Mm-hmm.
Was that must have been off of his experience working with you?
Yeah.
And he saw your work ethic.
Yeah.
And then what happened? What was some of your experiences from that show?
It was really fun. It didn't really know what it wanted to be. There was a lot of moving parts. It was supposed to be just like this little Sunday night show that about couples arguing. And then it got a little too much attention.
Because of Seinfeld's name, probably.
Yeah, and Leno's show crapped out at 10 o'clock, and they needed to fill all these 10 o'clock slots all through the week. And they convinced Jerry to have it be Seinfeld back on Thursday nights, which, sounds pretty great. But then they, as networks do, they promoted the hell out of it like it was the return of Seinfeld, the show. And then everyone saw this weird show with all these moving parts, part game show, part talk show, part whatever. And they were like, no, NBC, you're not going to force feed us this. If people were allowed to just discover it on their own, it would have had more legs, I think. But it was the most recognition I'd ever gotten. To be on that kind of a show is so powerful. So many people see you, and it was definitely a great experience for 2 seasons.
And you must have gotten some hate during the process. Like, I'm sure you got some love and you got some hate, like anybody on TV.
Yeah, I didn't get too much. I was almost like he was so big that any criticism was coming right at him, which was kind of unfortunate because he didn't want to be the face of it. But then the network, they would do ads for The Marriage Ref, and they'd show Jerry, and then they would show just the host's hands at the end. And my wife would be so pissed off, like, why aren't they even showing you? And when the critics came out and were saying negative things about it, they weren't really going after the hands of the host. They were going after
the hands. Really don't belong there.
Yeah. So in a way, I didn't come out of that show having been hurt critically, which was kind of a blessing. But it should have been on me, and he shouldn't have had to do it. But it's so when you're that big, how is the network not going to beg to have him be the face of it?
But I feel though like TV is a difficult medium in the sense that you could have everything behind you, like it's Jerry Seinfeld's name, it's NBC, and it's still canceled. And you've had other attempts at like doing sitcoms and so on. And just do you ever? I guess I'm looking for time. You don't seem like a very unhappy guy. You seem like a generally happy guy. I'm looking for a moment where you were like, oh, I really thought that was going to happen, but it just didn't.
Yeah, there's a ton of those moments. Your career is filled with those moments. There's a couple people that hit it big and hit it fast, and then they don't have to really worry. And but even then, they have failures later on, but they've already made it, so maybe it's different. But most of the stories in show business are a lot of disappointments. It's a lot of, remember like Paul Newman said something like, you have to be like a weed because they're going to pull you out and they're going to toss you aside. And then you just have to be resilient and grow back. Just keep growing back.
And I think most people are not resilient to handle that.
No, it's a lot. It takes a lot. You have to, I'm lucky that I'm genetically optimistic person. I think that really is a blessing because, I've had canceled TV shows. I've had pilots produced by Matt Damon and Ben Affleck that didn't even get on the air. I've had
why would that be? Like how do the producers know more than?
It's not even sometimes it's not even, you make something that's really funny and really good, and that year the network decides we're not picking up any new shows. We're going to go with all our lineup anyway. We're not doing it. There's people you don't even meet in the process that are making the ultimate decisions. You have no idea. It could be a guy from Quaker Oats that doesn't like, my co-host. You have no idea. And he's an advertiser of the Monday Night Comedy block. You have no clue. You really don't. That kind of is freeing and gives you the ability to keep going because you realize you do your stuff. And you got to get lucky in TV and film. There's certain things have to happen where you get lucky. You really have to get lucky because a lot of people are making a lot of good stuff and it doesn't go. So you really need to get lucky. And the one thing I think that we have an advantage of, rather than an actor who's been waiting their whole life for this role and they get into it and they don't, they cancel the pilot, and he goes back to his apartment and has to try and get another gig, we get to just go do stand-up that night. When they canceled my first thing at NBC, I had my very first sitcom, went for 4 episodes. They changed presidents of the network. We were the hot thing, and then this new guy didn't like it. They burned it off in the summer, and it was hard. It was definitely difficult to be like, oh man, we had it. We're right here. Like, we're so close. And this last minute, the president of the network leaves and a new guy comes. No one, you couldn't plan for that in all your writing meetings and casting meetings and wardrobe. And you can't plan for some new president's going to come in and not like what the old guy did. You cannot plan for that. So it gets canceled. That could be devastating. But within 2 weeks of me getting canceled, I'm driving my little Saab convertible onto the NBC lot, parking, getting my pass, walking onto the Tonight Show set, and doing stand-up. And that's when I realized they can't really touch you if you're a comedian. You really can control your career. I can't control television. I can't control, the film. I can't control that stuff. But I do have this one little part of show business that I can control.
Right, because you can, for instance, go on the road. And
yeah,
there's a lot of money on the road. If you're filling up...
If you have fans and you keep working and you have people that want to come see you, you can work forever.
How have you built up... How have you spent the years building up a fan base so you can go to, I don't know, Denver, Colorado and fill up a room?
It's just a cumulative, it's a cumulative effect of everything. You're going to that town, you're doing stand-up, you're being on the radio, them seeing you in a show, you pop up in a movie, they read an article, you're tweeting, you're doing Instagram. It's all exhausting. But, over a certain amount of time, and there's still markets that don't know me. Like, I can go into some market and be like, "Ooh, I've never performed here before." Apparently, they don't remember the Marriage Ref or whatever shows.
I've also been in the Informant with Matt Damon. You've been in a bunch of movies.
Yeah, there's a lot of, but this is the first time I'm rolling into St. Louis, and then it may be tough to sell. I don't know.
I mean,
it's a big country. You're not gonna. Kevin Hart can sell everywhere. The rest of us all have to hustle.
Like you're a big tier 1 comedian and you've been in a ton of stuff, but do you walk down the street and have people recognize you or?
Yeah, they do. Not enough. I would like it to be more often in front of more of my friends and family. But it does happen. It happens. It happens enough where I feel like, okay, this is good. Like you can really, it's kind of like, my wife will like tease me because, if somebody comes up or something, and I said, but it kind of is a real barometer of whether or not people are talking about you and know about you. The more people are coming up and talking to you, that means you're probably going to sell more tickets that year.
Do you ever feel the need to be like more? Almost controversial. So like, again, when you go in, like in your book and often when you're on stage, you're talking a lot about these truths that everyone could relate to. Oh yeah, that's what it really is like to be a husband or a wife or to be in a romantic relationship or to be a parent or a child or whatever. So there's this enormous sense of relatability in your work. But you take someone like Dave Chappelle, he'll go right into the whole transgender thing and Trump and all this stuff that's people are going to ask questions,
right?
And do you ever feel like, oh, I should talk about transgender more? Or...
No, I feel like I think I just know myself pretty well. When I was younger, I would try and like talk about different things, that maybe it just doesn't fit me very well. I'm not as good at that as certain other, like Bill Maher is better talking about politics than I am. So let him deal with that. Bill Maher can't talk about family life. He can't talk about what it means to be with, your kids or your grandmother. It's not his wheelhouse. I without sounding arrogant, I'm better at that than he is. He's better at talking about politics than I am. So it's like, why would I try and become that guy? You know what I mean? Like, it would be weird. My fans would be like, why is Tom smoking a cigarette and leaning against the back wall talking about the Israel-Palestinian issue. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't live there. I don't write that. It's not really my thing.
I think
you know, I'm sorry to interrupt, but
okay.
just because it's on my mind, Jim Gaffigan put out a tweet last night about my book coming out as a friend. He was just plugging it. And I was reading some of the comments on it. And one guy said, people were like, yeah, that's great. Thanks, whatever. And one person said, I used to like Tom until he turned political. Just stay you, Jim. And I was like, when did that happen? Like, I didn't even know like what he was talking about. Like, when did I become political? I never even get close to talking about it.
People, though, are so divided that they'll try to smell political in anything.
Yes, that's
so there
true.
could be like one thing you said, and they were like, that guy's for Trump, or that guy's for Hillary.
Yeah, you're right.
Even though they have no idea.
No, I did this. I was promoting something, and I was in this one day, I was on Opie and Anthony on the radio.
So now you're for Trump.
So, no, there I was liberal.
Okay.
There I was really liberal because I wasn't going with what they were saying. And then I went on Larry Wilmore when he had his show, and I said something about someone who was complaining about something, and I said like something like they should just work hard and keep going. And they said I was for Trump. So like in one day, just with these pretty much towing the line and not trying to be too controversial, I had come out as being really liberal and really extreme right within 6 hours.
Well, and people are, because they're sort of shielded by this anonymous barrier of the internet, people will lash out and be as angry as possible. Like it almost feels like at heart, the basic human is angry. Like Chappelle, when he does his Saturday Night Live monologue, he all he said was like, hey, look, we've got to give this guy a chance because we want a chance. Like he's trying to be as diplomatic as possible. And they destroyed him. His wife called him the next day. What did you do? And he got nervous at what did she find out? And you get nobody does anything, and yet you get crucified.
Yeah, it's a weird time. It's like we've taken the two extreme sides, and it's kind of bled in where people who weren't so extreme are like being caught in the tide of each one of them.
So let's take that almost as a concept. Not that I'm putting you on the spot, but I am a little bit. So the idea that the basic human now is supposed to be political, or else you don't care. Like if you're not political, people think you don't care, and that's bad.
Right.
They've never thought that way before. Like you could be not political, you could just like watching Netflix, and people wouldn't care.
Yeah.
Now, if you're not political, you're bad.
Yeah. I think that
what would you do with this?
I think people know who you are. I think people know the essence of you when you're on stage. I think when I come on stage and do my act, I don't have to talk about where I stand politically. And by the end of my act, you kind of know where I lean without even mentioning it. I could gather from you about where your political leanings are. I can get that from you. And then through your conversation, you'll probably confirm or change my opinion on those things. But I can get the essence from you.
But how
I choose in my act to make my act a different thing, that doesn't make you not caring. You know what I mean?
Right. But let's say you weren't going to be political, but you were going to comment on the fact that everybody expects you to be political. How would that fit into what would your process be of turning that concept into a joke?
Of turning what?
The idea that people now more than ever expect you to be political. They want to know.
Right.
They want to get their claws in you one way or the other.
Right.
Let's say we're going to take that concept and make it into a joke.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, the one thing I do talk about when I'm doing a longer set is don't watch so much news, that we are very lucky human beings, first generation that doesn't have to fight for survival. But you're also the first generation that's being inundated with propaganda 24 hours a day. And it's up to you to be smart about that and don't be played. Don't be manipulated by, you get your little news and then you go about your life and about the stuff that's really important to you. You have, we can't fight ISIS. We've got stuff to do. You've got a podcast to make.
So that's almost the punchline a little bit. You can't fight ISIS.
Right.
You got a podcast to do.
Yeah, you've got a podcast to do. People get in office. You like them or you don't like them. They do the job. If they don't do the job, we put someone else in there. That's their job.
So this is in the weeds a little bit, but what makes a punchline? Like, what made that line stand out above the others? Like you said, we have stuff to do. That's not a punchline. You said, we can't fight ISIS. You have a podcast to do. That feels a little more like a punchline.
Because you weren't expecting it, right?
And there's a little bit of kind of almost like an extremes. Like there's in specificity. There's ISIS and a podcast.
Yeah, maybe.
So
Yeah, maybe. It's just, and you're not expecting it, It should be about new thoughts and it should be funny things that, we can all think about. Don't watch so much news. We can all think about, we have to watch this more than ever. We've all thought that already. But you probably haven't heard, you can't fight ISIS, you have a podcast to do, right? So it's funny words, it's a funny juxtaposition, and you weren't expecting it.
Yeah, we weren't expecting. It's an interesting.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you this: your wife, you talked so many things about how guys are not great at best; they're good.
Yeah.
There's all these things about the difference between romance and then the transition that happens when you're an actual husband. Like now you have to go to art galleries,
Right.
Now you have to clean the lawn, whatever, think about kids. And then you're also on the road a lot. Like, how does a relationship work in the context of you kind of telling all these truths about the reality of a situation? You're no longer hiding. Every other husband is hiding still.
Yeah. It kind of ebbs and flows. It depends on what she's feeling, who she's with. If it's like a newer friend that doesn't understand what comedy really is. There's been times when people would say stuff and say, "I can't believe he said that about you," and she would feel bad. Like a couple of times she has asked me, not to check myself, but to, she would say that she's not happy with having to tell these people that, defend herself or whatever. And, but those people are idiots. They don't know. This is comedy. It's all exaggeration. There's some things that start off in truth, but they're all blown up. They're all blown up for effect, and, they're extreme things. And, it's just the way it is.
Do you ever get a heckler who says, "You can't say that about your wife," or...
No.
Your stuff's
because I'm not mean about
Right.
it. I'm not mean to her. I don't, I'm not like one of those guys that's like, screw marriage and screw this and screw her. And, I'm just talking about the realities of it. Like when you start a relationship, it's built on romance. Romance is the thing that I met her and she met me, and there was this chemistry, and it's very real, and that's what gets you in the game. It's just romance. And then after, 15 years and car payments and dead relatives and dead pets, there's no time for romance. You ultimately become business partners in a horrible nonprofit organization.
Okay, that's a punchline, which I didn't expect.
Right.
Nonprofit corporation.
And it's true. It's not hurtful to her. It's just the reality of what it is to be married, And if we can't laugh at it, then if she can't laugh at it, then we're really in trouble. We're the people who understand that the most. That laughing at all this stuff is the best way to survive it all.
So let me ask you advice. When you're at that 15-year point and
Right.
you've gone from romance to nonprofit corporation,
Yeah.
how do you keep the romance going? How do you keep the marriage
just as
going?
a marriage? I think going on the road doesn't hurt. I think when you travel and come back home, I think that's probably doubles the potency of the good part of your marriage. It really is. I think it's good. I think if you're there all the time, I think you might get on each other's nerves a little bit more. I don't go on the road that much. I'm in a run right now, but for the most part, I try and be home as much as I can. But I do go out, and even if it's just for 2 days, and then you come back, it keeps it fresh. You look forward to seeing. You're happy to leave, and you're happy to come back.
What do you make most of your living from? Is it from kind of going on the road every now and then? Is it from...
Yeah, I never wanted to make it purely that it had to come from the road, or else I'd be trapped on the road. So it was always, right now I essentially have 5 different jobs right now where I'm promoting this book. So I've got the book. I've got my Come to Papa podcast and live shows I do every month. I've got Live From Here, which is Prairie Home Companion.
I forgot to mention that, but Live From Here, your radio show.
Yeah, I'm the head writer for that show, so that's 3 jobs. Then I've got my stand-up tour, and that's 4 jobs. as just being a pure comedian. And now I have this new show coming out on the Food Network all about baking and off of my bread hobby. So I've got 5 jobs right now that are taking me all over the place. So the money, I'm trying to think of which. Come to Papa definitely pays the least. That one doesn't make any money at all, but I love doing it. The other ones, it's a combination of all of them. I probably make more money doing as a stand-up comedian than anything else. But you can see from those, I have 5 different jobs, 4 separate from stand-up. And I've always tried to keep that kind of a thing going because I don't want to be just purely have to feed my children by going to Cleveland to play in a comedy club.
Yeah, because I always say to people, invest in yourself, but it doesn't mean invest in just one thing. You kind of have to diversify that investment.
Yeah.
And I think for stand-up, it's possible to do that as opposed to acting. When you act, you're in one thing for a certain amount of time. With stand-up, you can act, you could do stand-up, you could do a podcast, you could do a serious show, you could write a book, and you have many opportunities.
Yeah, but I do think that all those things, if you can make them lucrative, that's great. But for me, the whole reason of doing those other 4 jobs ultimately is so more people will come see me do my stand-up. Like if I can, the more popular I am, the more I can tour on my own terms. I can pick the places I want to go for how long I want to go. That's like the sweet spot.
Well, Tom Papa, stand-up comedian. I encourage people to watch all your specials, listen to your radio show. And most importantly, I really enjoyed your book. Your Dad Stole My Rake.
It's exciting. That's the first book I've ever put out. So to know that people are like reading it and it's being well received is a relief, frankly.
I can't believe you haven't read sign language. Have you really not read sign
No, I
language?
never read it.
Because it really is in that genre. And have you read?
But is it all about family? Was it all?
No. But it's vignettes. It's not structured the way yours is around family and personal experiences. But it's his. I feel it's his type of act in book form.
Oh, that's
whereas
cool.
yours is your type of act, not completely, but how you would write it as a book. And just like Jim Gaffigan's Food or Dad is Fat, is like his type of act in book form. It's that genre,
right.
As opposed to like I don't know, other comedians
like Norm Macdonald, who did like a novel.
Yeah, or other guys write memoirs and stuff, which wouldn't be a bad idea for your second book. I would read that, particularly if there's all sorts of mentions of stand-up New York.
Yeah.
So
does Lenny Marcus ever play stand-up New York?
All the time.
If he grew in a big bushy afro, you might look like brothers.
There's Lenny Marcus. I mean, Amy Schumer. You've been on Inside.
You don't
Amy
look
Schumer.
like her at all.
No, I don't look like her. But she did it before her SNL monologue, and of course Seinfeld was there the other day. George Wallace does it all the time.
That's cool.
So,
you know what's so great about stand-up New York is that literally, I mean, I started there, 25 years ago, and you walk into that place, the certain things of the structure are the same, but the room shifted, it's been redesigned, whatever. The smell of the hallways, the smell of going down the stairs, the smell of the showroom is exactly the same. Exactly the same.
Is that a bad thing or a
not a
good
good thing, not a bad thing. It just has that very distinct. It's like going to a friend's house that always smelled that way. Going into stand-up New York, I'm telling you, it just, and sense of smell is really spurs memory. And that place, as soon as I hit it, I can see every waitress that was there when I started.
You should come back this week and perform.
I wish I had the time. I will. I'll do it at the end of June. I'll be there in the end of June.
All right, let me
when I
know,
come back.
and we'll do something. We'll make you like a headliner. We'll do a special format.
Yeah, that'd be great. I'll do it.
And we'll do kind of a deal.
Yeah,
I
sure.
just want to ask you one more question, which
Sure.
is, did you really write the first review of your book?
Yeah, on Amazon.
Yeah, so you wrote. It's from Tom P.
Yeah.
You wrote 5 stars. Yes, I love it, but I wrote it, but I still love it. I hope you do too.
Yeah, that was my review because nobody had reviewed it yet.
Well, I'm going to write a review as well.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
So thanks so much for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, this was great.
Your Dad Stole My Rake and Other Family Dilemmas by Tom Papa. I hope everybody buys it, and it's a really funny book, and it does tell these truths, so you could steal all these jokes for your family occasions and
yes, take
pretend
them
they're
all.
yours.
Yeah, give it to your dad for Father's Day and claim that you wrote it.
Exactly. Thanks, Tom.
AI might be the most important new computer technology ever. It's storming every industry and literally billions of dollars are being invested. So buckle up. The problem is that AI needs a lot of speed and processing power, so how do you compete without costs spiraling out of control? It's time to upgrade to the next generation of the cloud, Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, or OCI. OCI is a single platform for your infrastructure, database, application development, and AI needs. OCI has 4 to 8 times the bandwidth of other clouds, offers one consistent price instead of variable regional pricing, and of course, nobody does data better than Oracle. So now you can train your AI models at twice the speed and less than half the cost of other clouds. If you want to do more and spend less, like Uber, 8x8, and Databricks Mosaic, take a free test drive of OCI at oracle.com/advance. That's oracle.com/advance. oracle.com/advance.